Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Arrowverse because this new newsletter has come to my attention and it involves the Arrowverse's past, and I think it's very valid that I bring it up to you guys in a video. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV videos later this year. So potentially some of you saw this online. You could have seen Paige did a live stream about this earlier, as well as it got some mentions on Twitter, but it hasn't really blown up as of right now. So I thought probably most of you guys haven't seen this or read this yet, but what we're going to be reading through is a Substack newsletter from Mark Guggenheim. Now, many of you guys will remember Mark Guggenheim. He has worked on the Arrowverse for a very long time on many different shows. He's best known for his work on Arrow, Legends, and also on the crossovers. He played a huge part in most of those crossovers. And so the newsletter that we're going to read through and break down, obviously, it's quite personal to him. You will definitely be able to tell that from what I read through. So we're not going to go into too much detail as to like his personal feelings or my personal feelings or anything like that, because I don't think we can criticize. This is just like one person's perspective. I just think it's interesting for us as fans of the Arrowverse to go back and have a kind of different perspective on something that was so big in the Arrowverse's history. And so Mark Guggenheim hasn't been involved in the Arrowverse for a little while. Basically, his last big thing was Crisis on Infinite Earths. And since then, and even maybe around that time, he's been working on that Green Lantern show with Greg Berlanti. Recently was announced that that was actually cancelled and they are completely revamping it and going for a different Green Lantern show, not under Greg Berlanti and not with Mark Guggenheim writing it. So that's what we're working with here. We're going to go through and read through this newsletter, and so stick with me. It begins like this: "Your phone is going to ring off the hook," someone said to Mark Guggenheim. And then he says, "Such was said to me by a friend who's old enough to know what ring off the hook means. For those of you younger than that, it basically means the phone is going to ring a lot." The friend in question was talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths, a 5-hour, 6-show television event I was spearheading for DC Entertainment, the CW network, and Warner Bros. Studios. The project, a live-action adaptation of the seminal comic book series that made a significant impression on my psyche, was more than a labor of love. It was a labor in every respect and a project where I spent every ounce of capital I'd amassed in developing DC Comics related shows for Warner Bros. Over an 8-year period. I called in every favor, I burned every bridge, I even spent $10,000 of my own money. Years before Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness would mainstream the concept of an interconnected multiverse, Crisis brought together characters from 1966 Batman television show, the Batman 89 feature, the 1990s Flash series, Smallville, Lucifer, Doom Patrol, Titans, Swamp Thing, the Green Lantern movie, Superman Returns, Kingdom Come, the list goes on and on. Even Ezra Miller reprised their role as Barry Allen to meet the Arrowverse incarnation played by Grant Gustin. Then he goes on to say, spoiler alert, afterwards my phone did not in fact ring off the hook or otherwise. Yes, and I don't mean to belittle this in the slightest, fans loved what we did. There were tweets, there were posts, there were memes, there was much discussion, all of which I and remain deeply grateful for. Working on these shows, we always reminded ourselves that the opposite of love was not hate, it was apathy, and no matter what, there was never apathy, except for, well, Hollywood. Hollywood met everything we did with apathy. He says, why am I saying this now? He says, well, this week James Gunn announced he assembled a writer's room to help chart out what the new DC universe under his and Peter Safran's leadership is going to be. Suffice it to say, I'm not among that group. I'm not particularly surprised. In fact, I assumed they would assemble some kind of brain trust to help facilitate what I assumed and hoped would be a vision as ambitious as the DC universe deserves. But I'll be honest, I would have liked to at least got a meeting. Not a job, mind you, a meeting, a conversation, a small recognition of what I tried to contribute to the grand tapestry that is the DC universe. I'd only spent 9 years toiling in that vineyard after all. Then he goes on to say, and there was some other stuff that he was going to include in his original newsletter post that basically boiled down to him lamenting that although working for DC had been creatively fulfilling, it involved a lot of adversity, challenges and personal sacrifices, none of which seemed to have accrued any professional benefit. Simply put, the Arrowverse hasn't led to any other gigs, so it feels, at least on a career level, that I really wasted my time. And then he says, of course, I know that my experience in this regard is highly unique, and in fact it's grown all too commonplace recently that the loyalty writers devote to studios is not returned in kind, and those are the good situations. So that does it for this newsletter that Mark Guggenheim posted. Let's break this down and analyze what he is talking about here. So at the start, he's talking about how the fact one of his friends said Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to be huge and you're going to get many phone calls. That's basically what it boils down to. And if we look back, and he even admits this, it was a labor of love and fans did really enjoy it. It got a lot of attention online, got lots of tweets, lots of memes and everything like that. I mean, the head of Twitter and Tesla, Elon Musk, is posting like Grant Gustin memes from the set of Crisis with Oliver's grave. Like, you can clearly see that even the memes have lived on. So there is a place for Crisis, and yes, it wasn't maybe as big as they originally hoped in terms of maybe their careers. Well, specifically, obviously in regards to Guggenheim, because that's who is writing this newsletter and admitting this to the public. But he pretty much agrees as well that yes, it was still pretty big. However, it wasn't as crazy big as he thought. Obviously, it was a stepping stone for him, and potentially he could have got a lot more jobs. And the main point of focus that we have to talk about is at the end of his newsletter, he talks about how he basically sees the Arrowverse as kind of a bit useless and a bit of a waste of time. That's how he ends the newsletter. So let's talk about this. Now, in some ways, I do feel bad for Mark because he did put so much into the Arrowverse, and we can clearly see how much he's put into it just based on like how many episodes he wrote, how many shows he was working on, how many crossovers he did and everything like that. Clearly he was fully into this DC world, and I understand that he's a bit annoyed that he hasn't got much else from this. So I think on a career level I can totally understand what he's saying, but at the same time I feel like, I don't know, it feels a bit harsh that he was saying like, oh, the Arrowverse was a waste of time, because I think if you look at it from the perspective of the fans have grown up with these shows. It's been around for 10 plus years now since Arrow started. It's literally been defining for a lot of people's lives, including myself. Like, this channel, the DCTV show, has been pretty much my consistent, stable job since I was like 16, 17 years old. And that's all thanks to the Arrowverse and my connection to the Arrowverse, which I know all of you guys have that connection because you watch these videos, you watch the TV shows every time they come out. We talk about it online, we discuss everything, we break it down, we freak out when there's crazy cliffhangers or there's amazing theories that people put out there. That's because we're fans of the shows. And I think we have to admit to ourselves that yes, the Arrowverse has had an impact, and even if it goes away and it doesn't have the biggest effect like, say, maybe a Man of Steel film or a Batman film, which obviously touches quite a lot more people, there still isn't much to compare to a show that goes on for 9 years. That is, personally in my opinion, bigger than just like one film that comes out, that does big, is very successful, gets a lot of eyeballs on it in the cinema, earns a lot of money. I think having a 9-season show is much more important. Plus, with the Arrowverse, they've had so many shows. Supergirl went on for 6 seasons. Arrow went on for 9 seasons from 2012 to 2020. Like, that's literally such a long period of time. And now it's 2023 and the Arrowverse is still going. Yes, The Flash is ending this year, but Superman Lois is new. Yes, it's not technically on Earth Prime, but it's still an Arrowverse show. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, from a fan's perspective, it's been worth it. And I do understand that it's frustrating on a career level that nothing much has come from Mark in terms of getting anything else out of it in the future in terms of new jobs and new gigs and things like that. I do also feel bad for him that he wasn't called up for James Gunn's new DC universe. However, they have been pretty adamant on like resetting everything, so I understand wanting to get fresh new writers in there, fresh minds that haven't worked on past shows and films for DC. But then on the other side, I totally would love someone like Mark Guggenheim or anyone that's worked in the Arrowverse shows before to get involved in that new DC universe, or even just be able to continue the Arrowverse as an Elseworlds line of series to run parallel alongside the main DC universe. So I guess I'm kind of split in two minds on this, but I have to emphasize once again, I'm not judging anything about what Mark Guggenheim is saying in this, because this is just his opinion, and it's clear he put everything he literally could into these shows, and especially Crisis, because this is obviously what he's referencing here, and the fact that the multiverse has become so mainstream as of right now because of Marvel and Spider-Man, Doctor Strange and everything. But it's true, the multiverse was really put into the forefront with the Arrowverse. It was the Flash back in season 2 when we first got Zoom. That was the first time we actually went full on multiverse, and that's one of the reasons that I made my channel, because the multiverse was so interesting. The concept of time travel, timelines, different worlds, it was just crazy. And then obviously Crisis was supposed to be this big event, just like it is in the comics, that would kind of be the end of everything in terms of like mashing all of these worlds together, destroying worlds. It's supposed to be the biggest multiverse event. And then obviously post that, you have big successes like Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in the films, obviously in a very famous connected universe, that being the MCU. So I understand being frustrated by that, because I'm in the same position. I'm like, yes, the Arrowverse did it first, but this is still cool. So I am not opposed to seeing multiverse elsewhere, but in my heart I know, yes, it was the Arrowverse that kind of kicked that off. And so I really want to hear your guys' opinions on this in the comments down below. I'm obviously going to leave the link to Mark Guggenheim's newsletter Substack. That is where you can find what we've been talking about. I think the main point, as I mentioned earlier, is just what he says at the end to round out the newsletter, and that's the fact that he thinks on a career level, and he does emphasize the career level, so he tries to say that it's not personal. However, you could probably say there is like a bit of both in there, that the Arrowverse was technically a wasted experience for him and a bit of a waste of time, because it just didn't lead to much else. Obviously, Crisis happened just before the pandemic, so you do have to take that into account in terms of potentially he could have got a lot more phone calls and everything, but then the pandemic hit pretty much like maybe a few months after the end of Crisis, because we had a break between the first couple of episodes and the later couple of episodes into the new year. But obviously that's just me speculating about what potentially could have happened if the pandemic hadn't locked everyone away for a year or two. So I guess what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, don't go attacking Mark Guggenheim for his opinions. Obviously, we all have our own opinions, and that's why I was trying to emphasize, like, from a fan opinion and a fan perspective, it's definitely been worth our time having the Arrowverse and watching the show as fans. Obviously, most of us haven't been creatively involved in the Arrowverse, working behind the scenes as a crew or a cast member, but potentially some of you have if you are watching this video. And if so, I would definitely love to hear your opinion on working on the shows, and do you personally think it was worth your time based on the end product that came out of it, and did it help you in any way? But just before we end the video, I wanted to just point out one more thing. He says that Hollywood met everything that we did, that being, you know, the Arrowverse creators, with apathy, and apathy means basically a lack of interest or enthusiasm, which I can definitely see. Like, we feel that as fans, that, you know, a lot of the times we get kind of shafted in terms of what people are seeing and what people think about the Arrowverse. So I'm totally with Mark Guggenheim on this. I think people should respect what the Arrowverse did, and it created the multiverse properly into live action. set up a bunch of these concepts. It made the Flash super popular, it made Supergirl super popular. Arguably in the Flash film, I don't think we would have Supergirl, or maybe even a Flash film in general, without the Flash TV show. So I think it's made its mark, and I'm very happy to be an Arrowverse fan and an Arrowverse creator on YouTube, and I'll be sure to cover all of the shows as long as they're going on, including the Flash, which is airing on Wednesday nights, and obviously Superman and Lois is coming back very soon on Tuesday nights, along with the new Arrowverse show Gotham Knights. So stick around for all of that, but for now you can leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed this video. Also subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos, and you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video. But for now, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see room.